so many like triathletes, they don't like being bad, right? They're really good runners, they're really good bikers, and they just hate being bad at swimming. So they don't like swimming because it's a struggle. Not all of them, but a lot of them. They don't like it because it's not that they don't like swimming. They don't like being bad at something. Instead of seeing as room for improvement or I have all this room to get faster, it's I don't like swimming. And I always tell them, like, if you hate it, it means you need to be doing it. Like, there's a reason you hate it, right? You're not worse off for doing it. You hate it because you're bad at it. And the only way to get good at it is by doing it. So if you hate it, you have to do it. And I think this is one of those situations where I really didn't want to do it, but I knew it was that was the best thing for me.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, and for well over 200 episodes, we've been bringing you weekly conversations with people looking, finding, and living their purpose. It is my personal experience and that of those we have spoken with that in order to live in a way that is aligned with the reason you came to this earth, you will be required to face your fears, push your limits, and grow to become neutral in the face of discomfort. Our guest today is Craig Lewin, marathon swimmer, triathlon and swim coach who holds all the certifications and street cred to back it up. Most recently, Craig completed the Triple Crown of marathon swimming with a successful crossing of the English Channel in August. He believes that his journey has taught him much about looking inward and finding ways to get things done when everything says no, especially this year, navigating his channel crossing in the midst of a global pandemic. As a coach, Craig has created a reputation around getting people more comfortable in the ocean and teaching triathletes to swim with easy speed. So looking inward, overcoming resistance, pursuing epic adventures, easy speed, that's all we need to get this conversation going, man. So Craig, thanks so much for reaching out to us and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm definitely excited for the conversation.
Yeah. So you had listened to our conversation with Sabrina, who is en route to the English Channel in less than a year. And so I'm sure she'll be listening very closely to this episode. So here we are. So I appreciate you finding us and reaching out to us. And, you know, this podcast is all about connecting with people and sharing really, you know, our journeys and how we get to the other side of those things that we need to overcome in order to live in a way that is, you know, aligned with our purpose, aligned with what's on our heart. And, you know, I think that sounds really glorious and sweet and beautiful, but it definitely requires you to get on the other side of everything that has kept you from living in that way. So fears and resistance and all that good stuff. So you come from a swimming background, you swim at Boston College. How do you go from the black line to the open water?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, I guess. So it really started right before college. I swam in high school. I got a late start. I started at like 14 when all my friends started at 7. So I was already off. I was already behind. I just like to work hard. But my senior year, a friend gave me like a graduation gift in high school. It was Lynn Cox's book, Swimming to Antarctica. And I read it and I was like, that's what I want to do. That's the coolest thing. I have to do that. So after my freshman year in college at BC, I decided, I want to do some marathon swimming. I want to get into the open water. I want to do something different. And I signed up and qualified for the 25K swim at National Open Water Championships at the time. I didn't know what to expect because I had never swum that distance in the ocean.
Or been in a national championship of open water swimming.
That too. I was, the qualifying standard was very easy. I'm like, well, it's just shockingly easy. So I'm just going to enter and see what happens. And I learned a lot. But basically, it all started with that book. And I just wanted to, kind of branch out and see what I could do. Because when you get into the ocean, you have, you know, that fear of what's swimming underneath you. You have to deal with salt and cold and currents and all these different obstacles, which you don't necessarily you definitely don't experience in the pool unless you're swimming at some weird ocean pool and a shark happens to get in. So I wanted to challenge myself. And after reading the book, I'm like, that's what I got to do. So after the college season ended, I started getting to open water more. I would travel home from school on weekends because I only lived like 40 minutes from BC, and I'd swim in the ocean starting, I think, in March, and just start getting used to the water. And my freshman year in college, my roommates thought I was crazy because I used to sleep with ice packs because I was also training for the Boston Light Swim that year, which is I guess, colder swim when you're not used to it. And I was just getting ready for it. And it basically led me to this whole world of swimming that I never really thought about or experienced or even expected, really. So that's how I got into it. But it was more, what can my body do, and am I capable of achieving that was how I started, and just went from there.
What was it about that first open water, the national championship that you got yourself into? You said you learned a lot. What's one thing that you learned?
Don't listen to anyone. And I'll say that because I met a guy and he was competing. He was older than me. I think at the time I was 18 or 19. He was probably mid-20s. And this is like my first super long swim. It was in warm water. It was in Fort Myers, Florida. We swam around Estro Island. And he was telling me the story about be careful on your first one, because I ended up unconscious and I woke up 3 days later in the hospital. And so at that point, that's when I was like, I'm done listening to anyone.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, have your experience. And what I've become very, very frugal with the stories that I tell people about things that I'm experiencing, like behind the scenes, because what I found is that everybody wants to share their dread. And perhaps it's a way for us to, release that energy that we've been carrying. But I think that developing our own confidence around just having our own experience and not being tainted by maybe the naysayers, or, it's like, take what's helpful and leave the rest.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, this year more than ever, like that, I really could, I can empathize with that, just because this year whether it's jealousy or people looking out for me, but 2020, like the year of the pandemic, I had to spend months just ignoring, not watching news, shutting people out of my life, because it was like, you don't think you're going, why are you still training? And you can't let that get into your thought ever, because then you lose motivation. If there's no motivation, you just stop training. And had I listened to them, I wouldn't have achieved anything. And for me, I guess I learned that several years ago, I don't know, 17 years ago, 16 years ago. So I learned it then with that one guy telling me his story. But this year more than ever, it's true. Let me have my experience. If this is what I want to do, it's not hurting you. It's bettering me, because I'm pushing myself to a level that everyone doubts. And to have an experience that, whether, like I said, it's jealousy or people are scared for me, it's still a calculated risk that I had to take, because at the end of the day, if I didn't give it my all, I can't live with that. I can live with failing, but I can't live with quitting, and especially quitting over pools are closed, or someone told me you're never going to make it, or they're going to shut down the country, so just stop training. So I can definitely, I've experienced that too. Let me have my experience. You can have your experience, and let's see how we can learn from it and grow together, not you put me down because I wanted to try something big.
Yeah, and I think it does come. I think it does come from a place of goodness. Although I think we get that intention confused with the fear that's literally living in our cells, especially in a year like this year.
Yeah, the listening to people. I just did an Ironman. The first Ironman in the States on Sunday,
oh, nice.
70.3 in Arizona. Yep. And it's so true that if you're going to ask a question to someone you don't know, a stranger or people around you, you really need to be aware of what the answer could be in reflection to how you relate to it. So I see it all the time, and you see it on the trails, like further to the top of this trail. Now you're putting a lot of weight on this person's answer that you have no idea what their background is and how far they believe the top of the climb is. So it's really, I love that, because it's growing and strengthening that bond with yourself. Because come race day, we're coaches, right? The coaches can't be there with the athletes every moment of that experience. So if you don't have that faith and trust and belief in yourself, or at least working on that that connection, then you're going to continually cycle through the fear and the doubt. And it doesn't even matter if people are giving you feedback. You really are alone with yourself in that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true. That's definitely true. I mean,
so all we can do is give them the tools.
Right. As a coach, absolutely. You give them the tools. And as a coach, for me, it's important for me to, I guess, push myself so that I can know, okay, what does it feel like swimming for 9 hours? So I may have never done an Ironman, but I know what it's like to move for 11 hours. I know when my body's screaming at me, I have tips and tricks that have worked for me that I can share with them. So, as a coach, that's part of why I've personally pushed myself. I think it's important to get to that level where your athletes are going to do an Ironman and they might be out there for 15 hours, or I have a swimmer who might be doing the English Channel and they're going to do 14 hours, and teaching them how to cope with that and believe in themselves and push through it. That's really what I enjoy doing, because that's what makes them a much stronger person in the end. Like, that's how you grow and evolve. And I got to experience it firsthand. And I'm sure in both of your triathlon journeys and athletic careers, you experience the same thing, whether it's half Ironman, it's all relative to what you're used to. So for someone who's used to sitting on the couch and they go to a sprint, 40 minutes or an hour of exercise is a ton, especially when you're like competing. So teaching them, okay, like, how do you let the factors that you can control, how do you focus on that? And how do you let go of what someone else is doing? Because even in channel swimming, that's still a thing. Like, I'm out there with maybe 3 other boats, and one goes flying by me and the other one I'm passing, and in everyone's head, you're like, you're not competing. You're all just trying to finish. But it's hard to let that go. Like, it's like, oh, am I swimming slow? Am I not going to make it? Am I going to miss a current? And that's hard. And I think when I was racing triathlon, it was very much the same. And you can't control what other people do, so you shouldn't even bother focusing on it. It's look internally, use the tools that you've learned along the way, and use the tools that your coaches have taught you, and grow from there, and find your own like mantras or things you tell yourself to get through it. And one that I use, my coach told me, he's like, my coach is Dan Simonelli. He's Catalina Dan, or Dan Swiminelli. He's great. Like, he's like all about Catalina, but, and he's done the English Channel, but the one thing he always said to me is like, no matter how bad you feel now, keep going, because you're not going to feel that way in 30 minutes. And that has gotten me through every single hard swim, life thing. It doesn't matter. That saying and that thought process has got me through so many different challenging times. Like, just ride it out. It's bad now, but it might not be bad in a half hour, so just keep going.
Yeah, and I think that plays into both the mental and the physical. So if you're in that, just that doubt, like, doubt's going to creep in, things are going to creep in. But if you just... I think one of the tools that I have found really effective is, like, I think about, like, what am I feeding? What am I giving fuel to? And if I'm giving fuel to that doubt, well, getting to the other side of that's going to be a heck of a lot longer. But if I'm focusing my mind on something else, maybe it's just that stroke, maybe it's just that moment that my fingertips hit the water, or the very end of a breath, or the space in between, that I am going to get to the other side of it. But I'm not going to stop between, the start and finish of whatever that obstacle is that I'm trying to get to the other side of. So I think that goes for the physical. Yeah, you just keep going. Yeah. It also goes for the mental dialogue. If it's unhelpful, just keep going, keep going, keep going. It's just that very breath. That's all you have to do. And eventually, if you don't feed that negativity or the doubt or the fear, it will take a back seat. because it needs your fuel. It needs your attention. So, how does the Triple Crown come in? Because this is a huge undertaking, the Triple Crown of marathon swimming. You know, I mean, as a kid, like, you know, I knew about people who swam the English Channel. Now I know people very closely who have done it. How does this enter into your awareness? And when do you say, like, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that?
It's similar to Sabrina's story. Actually, me and her, we go back and forth on Instagram and trade tips. And I was giving her some feedback for her English Channel attempt coming up. And, but it's similar. It kind of was an accident. It wasn't planned, I guess, until this year. But basically, back in 2012, I was a support swimmer for the English Channel. And, I came home from that experience and I'm like, I never want to do that swim ever. This is I'm like, I'm never doing it. It's out of my head. I don't want to do it. It's not for me. It was the swim, the guy I went with, he completed and I saw all the joy and like all that accomplishment. And that wasn't enough to make me want to go through that again. It was the coldest water. It was the angriest water. I'd never been seasick before. Now I can't look at a boat without getting seasick. So at that point, I'm like, I'll stick with triathlon. I'm not doing this. And then basically I got hit by a car riding my bike twice, and it took me out of commission from racing, for triathlon, came back. I was making stupid decisions because of fear. Like I would be slamming on my brakes because I'd be focusing on a car 200 yards away. And at a certain point, you know, I got back on the bike. I started racing again. I didn't have that love for it anymore, competing. And then years went by. I didn't really do no competing, no big swims, but I was coaching. I was coaching for like, the whole time. It's been over 10 years now, specifically triathletes. And I was helping all these people learn to swim and achieve these goals. Some of them it was achieve an Ironman. Some of them it was swim the English Channel or some big marathon swim, and some was just learn to swim. And I'm watching everyone like have a moment of achievement and joy about reaching a goal, and I felt lost and I was out of shape and I had like nothing to look forward to. So I said, okay, I want to do something big that you can do everything right and still fail, but not the English Channel. So,
which is just like drawing it to you, you know?
I guess, yeah. So I reached out I had a friend who just did the English Channel, and I'm like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, what about Catalina? I'm like, started doing research. I connected with Dan, and I was like, this is a good goal. It's in the country. It's a 20-mile swim. It's colder water. It's going to require a ton of training. And if you do it, you start getting, I guess, not recognized. Like, it's not like a fame thing. It's you start people take you more seriously. It's like, okay, this is not like a random 10K, you know, it's not, which I'm not taking anything away from. It's just in like marathon swimming community. It's all about going long, right? So I picked this goal more because I was inspired by my athletes, and I trained for 8 months, got back in shape, did everything, did the Catalina, and it was a great time. And I finished, I'm like, I'm done. I don't need to swim ever again. And then like 2 months later, someone was like, why don't you apply for the 20 Bridges swim? And I'm like, okay. And I saw the class of people applying with me, like all the different, you know, I knew all the names. It's a pretty small community. And I'm looking, I'm like, that person has a huge race resume. That person has a huge race resume. I'm never getting in, so I'm going to apply. Like, I'm safe, and I'll let fate decide for me. And I got the email that I got in on the date that like my first choice day. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to do New York now. And then after New York, I was like, oh, I guess I have no choice, but I have to do the English Channel, because you can't, if you've done 2, you have to do 3, right? So that's how it came to be, I guess. I was very excited about Catalina. I was not excited about New York. And then I started getting more excited about the English Channel up until March. And then it was a much bigger challenge, but it took on way more meaning because it wasn't just about me finishing Triple Crown. It was me helping to show my athletes, like, practice what you preach. Like, I'm always saying, find a way. Do it safely, do it smart, but find a way. And that's basically in that moment, this was a teachable moment. I could then, put my money where my mouth is and show them, like, I found a way to do it. So if it's safe to do so, if you're comfortable doing it, if you have a goal that you're committed to, you will find a way to get it done. And so it took on that greater meaning, but that's essentially how it all came to be.
Do you remember a moment where, so after you finish Manhattan, and of course, like, it makes sense now for you to do the English Channel, but I've had these experiences in my life where you have a goal and you get to the other side of it, and then you have this like, oh shit. Like, cause you know what's coming next. Do you remember a moment like that leading into this decision to do English Channel?
Yeah, it was probably like New York. I did July 13th, and it was probably a week later. I had to go on a business trip like 2 days after New York. And once I got home and settled in, I was like, no, I have to, I was like so excited for off times, like, crap, I have to do it. And I was like reaching out to boat captains, doing whatever I could to get a spot as soon as possible. And I ended up lucking out. I didn't have to wait like the 2 or 3 years. Like, just things fell into place, and I got a good spot on the boat I wanted. But yeah, I was just like sitting there. I said to my wife, I'm like, this sucks. Like, now I have to go and do this one swim that I never want to do. Like, I have to do it. And it is hard because you have to do it and you can't put it off. It's like, okay, some people say, okay, I'll do it in a few years. But once you get out of training mode and then once it's out of your head, it's very unlikely that you're probably, it's very unlikely it's going to happen. And to come like within one swim of having your name, like your legacy, like, put in the books, like, you can't, it's a regret you don't want to go to your grave with, I guess, or at least I didn't want to. So, it was in that moment, I was like, okay, this isn't bad. Like, I get to do this. It's exciting. I'm lucky enough to be able to do it, to afford to do it. But at the same time, I'm like, I kind of don't want to do it.
Totally. And I think that anybody who's done, quote unquote, great things in this life, whether we're looking at really well-known names in or out of, sport, whether they're on this earth or not, I think we've all had those moments where we're like, ugh.
But that's how that's how great things are achieved, though. Like, that's how sometimes I look at these people that do great things and you're like, oh, well, they were made for it. And, they have, they were born with the genes and all of this. The more older I get, the more I realize that is like absolutely nothing to do with it. It's the sheer will of facing everything in your bones that says, this doesn't feel good, I'm never going to do this, yet moving forward and doing it.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I always say, like, especially with swimming. Like, I work with so many triathletes, and this is not meant to be like a put down, but so many like triathletes, they don't like being bad, right? They're really good runners, they're really good bikers, and they just hate being bad at swimming, so they don't like swimming because it's a struggle. Not all of them, but a lot of them, they don't like it because it's not that they don't like swimming, they don't like being bad at something. Instead of seeing as room for improvement, or I have all this room to get faster, it's I don't like swimming. And I always tell them, like, if you hate it, it means you need to be doing it. Like, there's a reason you hate it, right? You're not worse off for doing it. You hate it because you're bad at it. And the only way to get good at it is by doing it. So if you hate it, you have to do it. And I think this is one of those situations where I really didn't want to do it, but I knew it was the best, like, that was the best thing for me. And
yeah, I mean, the brick wall is where your work is. The resistance is the fear is where your work is. Like, that's where our work is. And I think when we can be awake to that, there's we also are able to embody or swallow the truth that there's really no destination, that, once you get on the other side of the English Channel, it's like, something else is coming down the pike, right? Like, something, who knows? This Antarctica thing is very interesting to me.
It is interesting, yeah.
So let's go to Catalina, because Catalina has that, and you know more about marathon swimming than I, but And it has a unique challenge that you, I think, always begin in the dark. And most of the swim is through the night. And so had you had experience night swimming, or how did you prepare yourself for that?
So I did it. So I had done some night swimming when I was a support swimmer for the English Channel, and swimming at night doesn't scare me. Like, that's not something that I was worried about. Like, I don't have the anxiety about like the darkness or any of that. I think I knew it started at 11. I never thought but one factor through, and that was I go to bed at like 9 every night. So to have to swim through the night, you're tired. Like, you're not physically exhausted because you're working. You're just tired because you're used to sleeping. So that plus the time change, what ended up happening was I was freezing, but I wasn't actually cold. I was cold because I was tired. I wasn't cold for any other reason. And that, like, getting into the swim, being 1 hour in, being like, I don't know if I'm going to finish because I'm shivering and frozen when the water's not even that cold. That was a hard pill to swallow. And now, with all my swimmers who are thinking about doing English Channel or Catalina or some type of like long swim where they might have to go through the night, we do night swims. And it's not because of the anxiety, but it's more, how do you cope? Like, what does your body do when you're tired? Like, how does your mind work when you're tired? Because it's hard fighting fear and anxiety and cold when you're like at 100%. So when you're exhausted, because you're normally sleeping, you have no idea how to fight through that and what it's going to be like. So I stupidly didn't prepare for it that time, but I certainly did for the English Channel. But yeah, that is a unique challenge. Swimming at night, some people have that anxiety of like, I can't see. Some are like nervous they're going to get lost, which is very unlikely given how Catalina does, like, you have the kayaker on one side, the big boat on the other, and all the lights and everything. So some people have that fear, but I stupidly was naive and very early on in marathon swimming or channel swimming that I didn't even think to do it. Mainly because I was like, oh, I'm not scared of night swimming because I had done it before. And it wasn't a fear thing. It was more your body is different at night. And that's what it came down to.
Yeah, you got to interrupt those sleep patterns. I discovered that when I faced my biggest fear, pacing someone at their 100-mile race in Tahoe. And I remember just like realizing that, like, I've got to interrupt my sleep pattern. I've got to go out at 9 o'clock at night and go for a run. I got to get out onto the trails when it's dark out. And that was a fear of mine, getting on the trails at dark. And so I would ask people, right? I was crowdsourcing. Thankfully, it was actually helpful because the few people that I asked about night running, they said, oh no, it's so much better because when you have the light, you're really focused and you're not really thinking about much else. Is there a similar thing with night swimming?
After experiencing it a bunch, yes, I actually do enjoy it. I think a lot of people who have done it have experience doing it, really, they do enjoy it. I guess one really unique experience for me was, with Catalina specifically, was, the bioluminescence. So when I was swimming, even though I was cold, and there were jellyfish all over the place, like, as I'm swimming, I'm like watching, like, my hands light up in the water with the bubbles. And I'm like, this is really cool. Like, this is a really cool thing. So, and in that moment, it's much more like, I guess you're going, it's a flow state or a Zen state where you're like, okay, I'm one with the water and I'm immersed in it. I'm part of this bigger whole, and you can really just enjoy being immersed in it. And that's one of the things that I love about open water swimming compared to pool swimming. It's you're just like this little tiny thing in this massive ocean, this massive space, and you can get lost in it. And it's very meditative, where once you get into a zone, I mean, I tell people, like, I don't even remember like hour 3 through hour 9 of the English Channel. Because I was in this like weird meditative flow state where I'm just like, I'm just in it. And it's like a really cool feeling. And I think night swimming brings that out even more because you're not focused on, oh, where's land? Where's this? Where's that? You're just in it and swimming.
Yeah.
And it's nice.
I think the darkness helps us stay focused. BJ, is there anything that you would like to ask Craig about night swimming at the Catalina Channel?
Yeah, so I was just fortunately asked to be a support swimmer on this person's swim across Catalina. So I will be one of her 3 swimmers. So,
by the way, you just announced that.
I guess, yeah. So I guess I guess
that's a
accepted.
yes. That's a yes, Mary.
Mary, it's a yes. Well, for the very reason it scares me, so I have to do it. Like, I have to do it. I mean, I'm a triathlete, and it took me years to get into the open water. Mm-hmm. I would race in open water, and that was it. I felt like the pool was enough, like I can simulate it until, I wanted to up level.
Yep.
And you got to get out there. You have to get into that environment. And now, through this pandemic, we had a lagoon here in Carlsbad that was open, and somebody put buoys out there, and I was there, 3 or 4 times a week. And even when the pools went back open, I was like, I'll get back to the pools if I need to. It was so great to swim open water. Yeah. So now I need to work. Not only am I going to be swimming in this ocean, I do get to wear a wetsuit. That's cool.
Yes, you lucky.
But it's going to be dark. I'm going to be swimming in the dark. So obviously we talked about getting the experience of swimming in that environment, but how do you reframe it for someone who has no experience in it? Maybe for your swimmers, like what is it that you bridge with them and meet them where they're at, where they're not enthralled with, how their stroke is looking versus like just being present and in the moment and allowing the environment to dictate like your vibe. Like how do you work with that with your athletes?
Yeah. So we actually just started doing recently I started doing some like sunset into night swimming. And I think that's a nice segue where if you're not super comfortable, and I don't know if me and my wife were both dive masters, so we scuba dive a lot. We love night diving. But what they do is, and this is where I had the idea from, is you start at sunset. So you're getting in the water at sunset and then you're ascending and it's pitch black out. So I was like, let's give this a try. Like these are not marathon swimmers. These are all triathletes, like all different levels. So not super experienced, but competent swimmers. And I'm like, let's do a sunset swim. So we got in about a half hour before sunset and we swam into darkness, and basically around like when we could see the sun actually going down and all the pretty, the pretty background. I had them stop and we just kind of enjoyed watching the sun go down and the different colors. And then we went back to swimming. And I think when you do it that way, it's a nice, easy segue because you realize, okay, like it was day, now it's night, but nothing actually changed. It just got dark, but you know what you're swimming in. And I think also swimming with people is like in that group environment is really helpful. But when we did this swim, I was like, look, this is not about racing. This is not about competition. This is about an experience. This is something that you don't normally do. You're not comfortable doing. So let's just enjoy it together. So we're going to go at the pace of the slowest swimmer. I don't want anyone breathing heavy. I don't want anyone pushing. I just want to enjoy it. Like feel what it's like going through the waves when you can't see, like, and just, paying attention to like the different sounds and what's going on around you. Because it's just like night dive, like scuba diving at night is different than scuba diving in the day. Like you have different creatures coming out and, it's a totally different vibe. It's really cool. So, that's how I started to do it. With the more serious swimmers, it's a little bit more, I guess. I'm like, don't wear a watch. I don't care about that. Like, I don't want your Garmin file. I don't care what distance you do. Just get out there and enjoy it. Whether it's 15 minutes or an hour or 3 hours, just enjoy it. Have fun. Like, it's about the experience and getting comfortable. And once you're comfortable, and then I want to see the files and the watch, but that's like, 5-6 sessions in, not the first couple.
Yeah, I love that. It's a slow transition. It's a slow way to just, allow them to to feel the other senses, because there's we're so set on the visual cues, right? Like the sighting, that's being able to see our hand in the water and all of that. And what you're saying is like, when you come back or come up and it's dark out, like there's really only the cue of, you may be able to see a little bit, but it's the hearing. Like, what do you hear? And be comfortable with those sounds, the dinging of the bell, or the waves crashing, or some boat going by. And that's just familiarity. And doesn't that happen with everything? Like swimming, or when you first day you go to college, or like the first time you get in a car, like all these things are new, and we do have some sense of fear. It's just that we place so much emphasis on the open water and the ocean. Yeah. It's,
I think one thing that unfortunately gets lost in most sports now is just like that data-driven aspect of, I need to be the best, and I need the watch, I need to see everything I'm doing, and people miss so much by doing that. There's a place for it, and there's a time for it, but there's also a time not to have it. Like, there's a time to enjoy what you're doing, and I've really come to enjoy open water swimming and marathon swimming, because for me, I chose it because it doesn't matter how fast or slow I go. It's just about getting to the other side. And I like that, because then it's like, if I want to stop and enjoy like the middle of Catalina, or I want to enjoy the dolphin swimming next to me, like I can, because I don't care. Some people want to break a record, but there's no fun in that for me. I'm here, I'm doing it once or twice or whatever, and I just want to enjoy it. And even if I did it twice, they're not the same experience, because the conditions change. And another thing, if you're, I guess a nicer segue, I guess, into like night swimming is go really early in the morning, so that you start, that's a good starting point too, so that as you're swimming and getting comfortable, like the sun's coming up. So in your head, okay, the sun's going to be up in 15 minutes, just ride it out. Keep going, because the sun's going to be up and it'll be super comfortable soon. And maybe you start there. And then, okay, swim at night, it's not so bad. And then you transition to the sunset swim, and then you do your night swims.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I did that with running. I would start really early in the morning before the sun came up on the trail, but that the light is coming.
Right.
You know that the light is coming, so you're like, okay, just be in the darkness and be here. Like it's not forever. And I think
when you did that, when you were doing your night running, I'm interested, because I had when I do the night swim, like for Catalina specifically, it was swim through the night. You're tired, you're cold, but okay, I just got to get through the next 7 hours, because then the sun comes up and I have this battery charge, recharging me. The sun hitting you on the back, it's like charges your battery. It's like a whole new energy. Is it a similar experience with running?
Yeah, we were up over 9,000 feet in Tahoe, and watching at first light and seeing the sun. It's it's like, yes, physically you're fully recharged, but I think what even supersedes that is this gratitude of seeing something like that that's so powerful, that's we take for granted so many times. Many people are waking up and it's already light out, like they're not awake during the darkness of the morning and those sacred quiet hours. And hearing the birds sing for the first bird. That's one of my favorite things, is listening for the first bird who starts the choir. And I had actually heard that prior to listening to some ultra runners talking about how you go through the night, and then when the sun comes up, it's like you just are so energized by that. And something that I use, and also when I'm in the water, when I'm in the open water, I use this too. It's just like, I am the ocean. Like I am that sunrise. I am that dolphin. Like I am this. And so I can fight it and I can feel separate, or you use the word, which I think is so beautiful. It's like you can immerse yourself into it and become it.
Yeah. It's like, that experience is cool, but it's a big thing, at least for me, when I'm talking to swimmers. I'm like, just be with the ocean. Like, don't fight it. You're never going to win. Environment, Mother Nature, she's going to win every time. So why fight it? Like, find ways to work with it. And that's where I think that flow state of mind is, it's not like flow. I mean, it's flow in a few different senses, like mentally, but more it's like, all right, I'm feeling the waves and the pressure, and my stroke is kind of diving down as the waves are going down, and I'm in, different phases of my stroke as I'm going up the wave. And, if you're so focused on other things, you miss that. And that's a very it's a nice feeling. You do feel like, you feel like, oh yeah, I'm the ocean in this moment. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
And I want more people to experience it.
I can just hear it in your voice. I really, two things, like your mindset is really, it's far superior to many. You have a joy about you that feels like it's the foundation of every word you speak, no matter of the challenges that you faced. And also, I can just tell you're an amazing coach. Like, you're an amazing
Some people
coach.
would think that.
Yeah, I think that. I know that. I can feel it. I mean, and just like you said, when as coaches, we can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and share the techniques and blah, blah, blah. But when we get right up against, our biggest wave, I think what really defines us as, as high performance coaches really is, are we willing to learn how to surf that wave?
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. No one's ever said that to me because they know me too well, I guess.
Well,
I think it takes time though. Like, as a coach, you have to challenge yourself because
you have to.
You don't learn personally, because I was a very different coach when I started than I am now. And I think everyone is, you learn, and I was that coach, this is the way and this is the technique. But the more I did it, I'm like, it doesn't work for 90% of the people. And then the more I transition, okay, there are fundamentals that we have to get. But once you have those fundamentals and you're not going to get hurt, your body is different than my body, which is different than the next person's body. So let's figure out what works for you. And that flow state of mind and, going with the ocean, not fighting it. I think that's the best way to teach it. It's like, okay, what's my environment doing and how do I become one with it? But it certainly has come with experience and
experience
coaching.
And isn't that life, right? Like, we can fight it, or we can learn how to, like palm trees. They're just palm trees, or they will bend over, but they won't break. They just really, they stay in flow with what's coming at them.
Absolutely.
So moving into the Manhattan swim, what are the unique challenges of that swim for you?
Other than not wanting to do it. It's, for someone who loves swimming, I really just don't want to do anything, apparently. No, I think it was unique in a lot of different, aspects. And I think Sabrina spoke about them, for people who listen to that podcast, she spoke about those challenges very nicely. I think her experience might be different because she did it this year versus other years where you're in that group. And the big challenge for me was I went into it saying, don't get caught up. Don't get caught up in whatever anyone else is doing. Because like she said, in prior years, it's a group of, there's 4 different dates and it's a group of 16 people.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that.
So they do these things called quiet swims, which are 1 or 2 people on a random day, but there's 4 big dates, one in August, June, July, August, and September, or maybe there's 2 in July, whatever it is, but there's 4 big dates, and they get around 16 people to do it. And the organization, New York Open Water, does a phenomenal job. I never at any point did I feel like I was in danger, any of that. It was probably one of the safest swims I'd been a part of. But because of currents, hitting the current at the right time is really important. Because if you miss it, you don't get that current assist. You're in your head the whole time. So I think she experienced that, I got to hit the current, So I was experiencing that, but then they also stagger your start. So they put you with people of your ability. So I was in the second to last wave, and there was a few waves before me, and there was one wave that was 5 minutes after me. That was 2 incredibly fast people that I think passed us in the first 10 minutes. But in your head, you're looking, you're where's the other boats? Am I in last place? And this is not a race. You don't get, if you come in first, you can say you came in first, but there's no first place award. The goal is to finish. So I'm like, there was so many challenges for me because I was a cold water swimmer and I think it was 77 degrees that day. So that was the first one. I was in my head about the currents. I'm like, I'm going to miss the current, got to miss the current. So I'm like sprinting the first 2 hours, which is obviously problematic for many reasons. And then, and I'm racing. I'm racing people who are not racing me, you know?
And you're not in a race.
And I'm not in a race.
Not winning or losing.
Just there racing.
Right.
I'm like an idiot racing. Like, you know, it's like when you jump on the treadmill and the person next to you, they're not watching you, and you're like, oh, they're going this. I gotta, you know, turn up my thing and, you know, bury them. It's like, that's what I'm doing. Or it's like I go to the pool and there's like a 9-year-old lady swimming laps next to me, and I'm racing her. We're not in the same race. So I think there were some unique challenges there, but they were my own doing. Like in my head, I said, don't get caught up in this. And then as soon as like the horn went off for my wave to go, my mind went blank. I went right back to it. I'm like, I'm racing. I'm doing all this. Like, and I didn't care. I wasn't trying to come in first. I just didn't want to come in last. So the whole time, like, that's what I was thinking. And I blew up in the first 3 hours. I did not handle the heat well, which is shocking because I don't handle the cold well either. I was just like in this really bad place where I was like super dehydrated, and I was doing my feeds, and I actually had to change my whole feed plan because I'd just gone so hard in the first 2 hours. And eventually I kind of settled in. Unfortunately, it was like the last hour of the race, but it was cool. I mean, there were parts that were cool. There were parts that weren't cool. I will never like the Staten Island Ferry because it made me sit for like 8 minutes treading water because I had to wait for it. So because I made all this progress, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. I'm almost at the end. And I'm like, they're like, no, you got to hold up. This stupid orange ferry's going to go. I'm like, I'm more important right now. So then my whole time, like every time I see the time, I'm like, and again, no one cares about the time because it's all about finishing. But to me, that race, like I hate that orange ferry because it tapped on like 8 extra minutes to my swim.
I love the contrast of these two experiences. You're like the bioluminescence and Catalina, and then
Dolphins.
you're
and then like a ferry.
Yeah, Manhattan's just like a battle.
And the heat.
So coming into the final of the 3 races, the English Channel, here you are doing it in the midst of a global pandemic. So I'm assuming you're quarantining. And so, I mean, besides the English Channel having its own unique challenges, now you've got all these other challenges on top of it. And then people saying like, you know, whether you're crazy to go, you're a jerk to go, like you're stupid to go, whatever it may be, right? Because fear is at an all-time high. Yep. And, yeah. So how did you become one with that experience?
I burned some bridges.
That's okay.
But honestly, at the end of the day, I look back on it, I don't care. Like those people who weren't supporting me were not people I wanted in my life to begin with. And it was hard because like I had family who was very supportive. And I think when some of them were very nervous, like for me to go, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm like, there are people who are just, you know, it was not coming from a place of love. It was like, well, I don't want him to succeed because then that makes me feel terrible because he's doing something during this when I'm not. And I just had to, you know, it was a tough 4 months where, if anyone posted about COVID on Facebook or Instagram, I didn't block them. I just hid them so I didn't see their posts. I didn't watch the news, which, stupid or not, I don't care. I didn't want to hear about it. I'm like, I don't live in a COVID world. I'm in my house and I'm in the ocean and that's it. So
yeah, I love that. I mean, we haven't watched the news and I don't know how long. I hear there's an election coming up.
Yeah, I definitely don't watch it now.
I might get in big trouble for saying that. Yeah. I'm only kidding.
I don't watch it. So, you know, my wife took she took some bullets for me where like I leave a family Zoom because the second it would pop up, like the topic of COVID would pop up, I just walk out. And then she'd be like, can you guys not talk about it? Because then I have to deal with him being upset. I have to deal with you being upset that he left. Like, can we just like not talk about it? So there was a lot of that. So it was a little tense, but I couldn't let that doubt get in.
Yeah, but I think that's so courageous. Our environment is stronger than our will. And, you know, you've got 3 options always. You can engage with it. You can just sit there and endure it, or you can walk away. And walking away is...
All three are fine.
I find walking away to be the one I choose the most.
I put me in a place that I enjoyed because I had my supporters, like my true supporters, and then it was me. And I wouldn't do marathon swimming if I didn't like being alone. Like, I like that, that personal, and it is not a solo sport. Like, if you succeed, it's because you train, but you have a crew, and you helped your crew get you across, and your crew helped you get you across. Like, my dad ended up, coming with me, and these were not like easy conversations. Like, so on July 4th, the UK announced, hey, we're opening up to travel, but not the US. You can come, but you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So my date was July 26th or 27th. So I'm like, and I was like, I have to plan, talk it over with the family, and then plan a potential month-long trip in 4 days. Because by the time I wrote to the captains and the Channel Swimming Association about what my options were, and to make sure I was cleared to land in France, since that's an EU country, I was like, we made a decision, if you don't go, none of us can live with you. Because it would just be the worst thing ever. And, but there were fears. I didn't want to get it. I didn't want to be in a foreign country getting COVID and dying in an Airbnb by myself. I was going to have to hire a crew out there. I don't know how people are going to treat Americans overseas. Given how we've handled the whole situation. So at the end of the day, after a lot of less than pleasant conversations with family, this is the right thing to do. And I mean, this was not fun for me. Once I was there but the whole experience, getting up there was not fun. It literally sucked. Everything you look forward to in a big swim like this, it was gone. I was so excited. I had my support swimmers from Catalina. They were supposed to come. My mom, my wife were going to be on the boat. My dad was going to be crew. All gone. So, if I finished, we were all going to go into London and have this really nice meal and celebrate. Gone. So it literally became just one mission: get there, swim, get home. No fun, no frills. Which really is kind of a bummer, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'm really glad I did it, but it was it was not easy decisions. And I think when people look, they're like, I can't believe you did that. That's irresponsible. I'm like, you don't get it. I was on the plane with 4 masks on, a face shield, a hazmat suit, changing my mask every 4 hours you're supposed to, and not eating food. I camped out in Canterbury in my Airbnb, and I couldn't swim for 2 weeks. I'm like, well, to not swim the 2 weeks leading into your swim is scary.
This is so epic. I'm so glad you went. I was supporting you even though we didn't know each other.
It's okay. But, so I'm like, well, what can I control? I'm scared of the cold. So what do? I literally had nothing else to do. I did 3-hour cold baths in the Airbnb for the 2 weeks leading up to it, because I'm like, well, I can't swim. So I did my, cardio and everything in the backyard. And then I would do my cold baths the rest of the day. And that way in my head, I'm like, okay, the fitness 2 weeks isn't going to break you. You might not feel 100%, but it's not going to break you. You already did the training. Being out of the cold for 2 weeks is a different issue. And the fact that I could still control that one big fear I had, that was the most important thing to me. So that's what I did. I was I did my cardio, and then I just sat in the cold bath and froze for hours.
God. Yeah. I mean, there's that mindset again. It's what can I do?
Yeah. It's also finding a way, right? So not being a victim to the circumstances that present themselves. Ideally, it wasn't played out how it was supposed to, but then again, is anything ever perfectly mapped out? So you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to let go of some things, only to like you were saying in the beginning, allow and surrender to the waves, surrender to the conditions in the water. And it's not, I'm using surrender as relenting to the experiences. Yeah.
Right.
So that you can be that powerful person and swimmer. And I don't think most people would have gone forward. I actually to have in my mind just now, just thinking 2 weeks of non-training, specific training is like, whoa, like, what are you thinking? Like, how are you ever going to do this for a swim that takes how long? What was the time of the swim?
It was 11 hours and 24 minutes for me.
So that's a long time. So the last swim you had was, 14 days previous. So how did you, and I know you're in that realm of finding a way, but did you have to rationalize with yourself that this is the circumstances I've been giving? I'm fit and strong. I will be ready. Yeah,
I knew I was ready because I had 3 solid, like I had the 2 big swims under my belt already. I had done 6 hour, 7 hour, 8 hour swims, back-to-back days. I'd done all the work. And I'm like, I said, I keep telling myself, like, 2 weeks is not, I said to myself, 2 weeks isn't going to break you. And this is a good thing. Like, your shoulders are a mess. Your back is a mess. Your neck is a mess. This is good because you are forced to let things recover. And you might actually go in way better than if you had swum right up to the day before and then did the swim. Like, you might have had shoulder problems the whole swim and it would have been a really crappy experience. So I went in and like, it didn't go smoothly, but I went in with far less issues than any of my other 2 swims. And I was much happier for it. So it was that mental shift of, this isn't a bad thing. This is actually a good thing in the end. Like, you did the work. There's no cramming for a swim like this. So the work is done. Like, what is it? The hay is in the barn. Like, there's nothing you could have done in those 2 weeks that would have changed the outcome. So at this point, just, I guess, enjoy the rest and focus on being cold all the time. And that's what I had to do.
And it's truly where the fitness happens. The fitness really doesn't happen when you're thrashing your body in the ocean. It happens when you rest and you're able to adapt to that stress that you put on the body. So it's almost a gift. And I know as athletes, we're like, no, don't tell me to rest. I don't want to rest. Please. But that's super important. That's super important in this scenario where you probably gained a little bit more fitness, although the mind was probably like, in that realm. But what an amazing way to come out of this pandemic to keep the momentum moving forward, to finding a way, to not letting these circumstances dictate what happens, to come full circle and then achieve what you want to achieve, and then be able to return knowing that you gave everything.
Yeah, it was, it was actually surprising in the end because I tried to keep it pretty like quiet in terms of like, I didn't really tell anyone about it until I was already there. I didn't really post about it. I was doing all the long swims, posting with the long swims because some people find it inspirational or whatever, but it was more about just getting, for me, it was like, there's so much uncertainty. I don't need the added pressure of social media to ruin this experience. Like, because if you fail, marathon swimmers know there's a million reasons out of your control that you might not finish, like weather or, someone on your crew gets seasick and they have to go in, or there's all sorts of reasons and has nothing to do with you as a swimmer. And sometimes it's just not your day. And to pile on that stress on top of all the other, like, the channel brings its own stress, like not in a COVID year, where you could get there and the weather is terrible the whole week and you don't even get in. So like you have this whole weather stressor. And for me, like I got home or I finished a swim and like the couple weeks after, like all these people are reaching out to me. I'm like, this is crazy because I didn't even talk about it. Like other people started posting about it and eventually I did share it like when I finished, but people like, oh, you like gave me like the motivation to keep going, not to quit on my goal, my goals. Like, and they would tell me what their goals are. And like, I'm looking like last week or a couple weeks ago, I'm seeing people that I know, like Catherine Bree just did like the Uberman triathlon. Like it was like some world record relay.
With James and Casey. Yes.
So she's like a phenomenal marathon swimmer. She did the Monterey swim, broke the record there at Monterey Bay. And then there's like Carly Miller, who just did the California Triple Crown. So I'm so glad I didn't listen to people because if I saw all of them finishing their swims, imagine how horrible I would feel. Like I quit.
Oh, you'd be so pissed.
Oh, I'd be so mad.
You'd be wicked pissed.
I'd be wicked pissed.
We had to get wicked in there.
I know. So, it was nice to see that instead of the negative response, I can't believe you're so selfish and going, it was like, thank you for going and showing me that there's there's hope. There's a reason to keep training. There's a reason to keep doing this. And it wasn't just like training and swim related. It was like all sorts of people from all walks of life sending me emails and messages, which was unexpected, but also very cool.
That's amazing. So we talked about your first open water swim. And as we wrap this up, I asked you what you learned about yourself, or what you learned from that first open water swim. What did you learn from the last one, from the English Channel? What did it teach you about yourself?
It's I think it's that take risks. Like really, like don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of things you can't control. Like focus on what you can control, and do everything you can to, I guess, not avoid failure, but do everything you can in your power, because failure is not bad. Quitting is bad. So for me, it was just learning how tough I could be, and I guess and I don't mean tough in a physical sense. This was far more of a mental journey than anything else. I think for me, it was more trusting your gut and not being afraid to do what you feel is right. And no matter how many people that you piss off in the process, if you do it in a respectful way and you're not hurting anyone in the process, that's, for me, it was like, okay, you're a strong person not because you did the swim, but because you went through every single obstacle that could get thrown at you, between injury and COVID and not having a pool. And I mean, swimming in 40-degree water to get a swim in because there were no pools. I think for me, that's what I learned is like once you have a goal, how committed once you have a goal and you're committed to it, what lengths you'll go to. Personally, what lengths will I go to get it done if it's a real goal for me? And I think that's ultimately what I learned about myself, is that if I'm committed to a goal, I will find a way to get it done, as long as I can control those aspects. Because there's certain things, if the government shut down, this would never have happened. Like if I couldn't fly in, and that's something you have to be okay with too. Like be okay with the things that you can't control and focus on the things you can control.
Awesome. That's amazing. How do people follow you or reach out for assistance or advice?
So my website's liquidtri.com. because we do swimming for triathlon. So liquid,
you've got some
TRI.
Awesome articles up there and blog posts, so people need to check that out for sure.
Yep. And then the Instagram is at Endurance Swim or at The Salty Swimmer.
Awesome.
So those are all the ways.
Yeah, that's so New England. Salt of the earth. I love it. Craig, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Really appreciate your time, and more so than anything, I get so much joy in my heart when I hear people like you, just the caliber of coach you are and human being, most importantly, and what you're bringing to endurance sports. So thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I loved it.